Hey, I remember in a dev blog, y'all knew that Silas would be popular. A different blog said y'all knew that Ivern would not be popular, but would be a great niche audience. Were there any champions that surprised you all with their popularity? Well, that's a great question, and I'll ask you, chat. Is there any champions that you think surprised us at Riot with how popular or big they became? There's one in my mind that I immediately think of that I'm going to talk about, but were there any surprises out there? Any things that we just didn't expect? We got some Briars, we got Set, we got Zoe, we got Aatrox. Yeah. Here's some. Here's two for you. Smolder and Jhin. Smolder, we made a bet that he'd be like a pretty appealing thematic. It turns out Baby Dragon is just really, really, really cool. But we were very surprised just how incredibly popular he was on release. Smolder was a very, very, very popular champion on release. And credit to the team that worked on him, credit to his art team, credit to his designers. Like Smolder really popped off. And I think he's definitely a character to be very proud of. And so that's a character that we probably estimated, like we estimated he'd do okay. Like I'd say we were like, yeah, this will be a character people like and will be fun and enjoyable, and people like baby dragons. But he did really, really, really well. So that's Smolder. And some people are in here saying he only did well because he was OP. There's two things I want to mention about that. One is you can't pay people in MMR to play things they don't think are cool or enjoyable. And so, yes, any character being overpowered will get more play rate. If you make a character that's legitimately just not super cool or super exciting, they will not be played that much. It's just, that's how that happens. A second thing about Smolder is, yes, we've nerfed him afterwards, but anytime Smolder is like close to viable, he gets a pretty substantial play rate. So to this day, when he is viable for the average player plays Smolder and enjoys Smolder. The catch with Smolder is that he tends to have to be nerfed around, I think recently he had to be nerfed around like pro mid lane and stuff. And so there's definitely some like rough things there. But Smolder is a character that 100%, if the average player can play him and feel like he's strong and can win games on him, then he gets a lot of play rate. The other one to talk about is Jhin, with the original question being, were there any characters that surprised you with how popular they ended up? Jhin was a character we fully expected to be very niche. I expected Jhin to not be anywhere above average play rate. Like, just like average. Like, yeah, he's got some mains. And I expected even to some degree to be a bit below average. And we expected that as well from like his looks. It was kind of the thing where it's like, he looks weird. He's not a normal guy, and he's got some really weird stuff going on, like his kind of like hunchback thing in the cape gun thing, and the gameplay is weird. You have to reload. There were so many people who, when I was working on Jhin, would play him and be like, I don't enjoy this character, he's not an AD carry. And then I would take that feedback and try to find ways to make him be more enjoyable and more fun. But the general conclusion I got from other designers who were working in Jhin was, he's not bad. He definitely gets to see how he's a fun guy, but he's not for AD carry players. And so the assumption with Jhin is that he would be for someone. He would be for, people who didn't like attacking a lot. And the assumption would be like thematically he would still be really cool, and for some people there's that theme of like, the weird serial killer artist thing going on there. And then he went crazy. Like he is way more successful than I could have ever imagined, and I think many of the folks who are working on it could have imagined. Again, that's not because we were working on a character that we thought was going to be bad. We were working on a character that we thought was going to be niche. Meaning that like we were like, we're going to make this really cool champ, and there's going to be some people who really love him, but most of the AD carry players aren't going to want that. And yeah, I'd say one of the things to give credit to Jhin for that kind of like helps him transcend his limits, if he even has any, is all of his art. Everything associated with his art is incredible. The advertising campaign they did for him, The VFX artist on Jhin was incredible. The sound designer on Jhin, the animations, the voice, the lines, everything about him from an art perspective, I think was really, really, really good. And the thing I would really talk about, to me, that I think is incredible is when you play Jhin, it feels a little bit like you're in his head. And that's a little deliberate. There's things like there's violins when he ults that he hears, and he actually has two different voices. One for the voice that other people hear, and one for the voice that the Jhin player hears when he is speaking. He doesn't have two different voice actors, to be clear, but like his lines have a different treatment, is what I meant to say. Like he has two different treatments for his lines. And so I think that's one thing that the team that was working on him from those perspectives just did amazingly well, is he not only has incredible art, but they really put you inside his head, which I think was pretty impressive and really cool. And so so he ended up being fairly popular at the end of the day, but we definitely didn't expect that. That was a surprise. So here's a fun story about Jhin, since we're chatting about him, or yapping about him. So Jhin used to be, let's see, Jhin concept art. This is just a fun random story. So Jhin used to be much more cowboy themed. One of his pieces of concept art is this. I'm sorry, it's really blurry, but hopefully you can get the idea from just the look of it. He had some other concepts that are like a bit that were Western. He had some other concepts that were Western, like this guy with the cowboy hat and the mask, stuff like that. Oh, here we go. This is this. This, of course, if you didn't know, like a lot of this was adapted to his skin, but he originally was a lot more Western themed. He was like this guy under this cloak with this big hat and these goggles and bandana, and you couldn't really see what was going on under there. And we also had some like concept of him like wrapped up in bandages with a bowler hat and stuff like that. There's a lot of like really weird, creepy stuff going on with him there. And the fun story is, originally Jhin was intended to be, one of the places we pitched him from being was from Bilgewater. So he was going to, have a little Wild West theme and be a Bilgewater champion. And the story that was pitched was Jhin was friends with Twisted Fate and Graves. He was like a part of their gang, basically, that did crimes. And the idea is that Jhin was basically the perfect sniper. He was like a dead-eye, crack shot, could hit anything from anywhere and assassinate it with like basically it was that easy. And so he was so obsessed with it that eventually he would start like trying to make things harder just because it was too easy to kill people just normally. And so he had this whole thing of like, he would not just take the perfect shot, he would take the hardest shot because that would challenge him. And he'd get really weird about it. And so he was like, in this gang with Twisted Fate and Graves. And eventually Twisted Fate and Graves were kind of like, this guy is messed up and we cannot roll with him anymore. He is too unhinged. He is dangerous in a bad way. We can't be around this guy. And so the story is Twisted Fate and Graves kill Jhin, and they're on a boat, and they dump him off of the boat near the Shadow Isles. And then they're back in Bilgewater months later, and he comes back, and he's not dead. The thing of it is, though, is he's not back for revenge. He's not back to kill Graves or Twisted Fate for doing him dirty or anything like that. No, he's back because he wants to get the gang back together. And he's just like, hey guys, I'm undead now, and I've got even better powers, and I am just an even better shot than I was before, and we gotta just go back to old times. I've got some assassinations lined up. And that was the idea. And that's like the story he would have been in release, where basically Graves and Twisted Fate have this crazy guy following them around. And they're like, how do we get rid of him? We've already killed him once and that didn't work. And Jin's just like, guys, it's the gang. We're back. And yeah, that was fun. That was one of the ideas. And then he moved to Ionia.